All right, we're keeping an eye on Dulles Airport there. John Kasich set to speak at any moment now, and he will explain, I guess, to the entire country why he's decided to stay in the race and not drop out like Senator Ted Cruz did. We'll see what he has to say in minutes, I hope. Let's talk about that Nevertrump campaign, shall we? $75 million, more than 64,000 attack ads, and none of it was enough to stop Donald Trump as he won over Republican voters from just about every corner of the country. Where does the Nevertrump movement go from here? Some top Republicans say Trump is leading them to the Democrats. Last night, a former top aide to Senator John McCain tweeted, quote, "The GOP is going to nominate for president a guy who reads the National Enquirer and thinks it's on the level. I'm with her." And a contributing editor for the conservative blog Red State simply posted Clinton's hashtag, "I'm with her." So let's talk about this. I'm joined by political editor for TheRoot.com and professor of political science, Jason Johnson, along with Sunlen Serfati and Phil Mattingly, who've been following the candidates. Good morning to all of you.
Morning, Carol.
Wow. So Jason, do you think that those Republicans who say that they'll switch over and vote for Hillary Clinton, will that hold until the election?
Carol, I don't think it's going to hold, but it's certainly going to hold Donald Trump back. He may be the huge empire that's taken over everything, and he beat down 15 different additional candidates. But at the end of the day, he really hasn't won over enough of the Republican base. And I think the fear isn't so much that you're going to have Republicans voting for Hillary Clinton. I don't think they're going to switch sides that way. But I do think you're going to have Republicans who stay home. And if they stay home, that doesn't just hurt Donald Trump's chances. That's all those down ballot races. That's why you got people right now worried that Republicans could lose the Senate and not have a chance at the White House.
Interesting. So Sunlen, exit polls in Indiana show 71% of Cruz voters would not vote for Trump if he's the GOP nominee. Why?
Well, this is such an interesting question, and I think that it clearly shows that the wounds are still very raw from what can only be described as a very bruising primary campaign. I think that there is a sense within the Cruz campaign world that at some point Senator Cruz will make a stance on whether he supports Donald Trump as the nominee or not, in whatever form that takes place, whether he just does not say and that's the answer, or whether he actually makes some sort of formal remarks about this. And certainly that would be important for his supporters to get a signal from Ted Cruz whether that he believes that they should go on to support Donald Trump. You know, it was interesting. I asked him at his last campaign event here in Indianapolis on his way out en route back home if he would support Donald Trump as a nominee. Very clear he does not want to engage over that. He would not answer repeated questions. So this will be interesting to watch from him going forward. You know, this was always the thing that haunted him in the last days of his campaign. Will you support Donald Trump as a nominee? Aides really admit that was certainly struck a chord that Donald Trump went after his family, not only Heidi Cruz, but his father, and that really had a big resonance on him and potentially his decision going forward. Carol.
So Phil, I want to talk a little bit more about John Kasich, who I said was set to speak at the Dulles Airport moments from now. I think a lot of voters are just scratching their heads. I mean, Marco Rubio has more delegates than John Kasich. He won one state. I'm just not getting it.
I think if you want to look at what John Kasich is thinking and what his top advisors are thinking, it's that the race has become kind of bigger than perhaps winning getting to 1237. The race has become about the choice between Donald Trump and the choice between another direction of which John Kasich believes he represents. One of the most interesting elements of this, though, Carol, is if you look at the Stop Trump movement or the Never Trump movement, that was a movement that dumped cash into backing Ted Cruz in a number of different states and largely ignored John Kasich. Now, I think the hope from the Kasich team is, in the wake of Cruz pulling out, perhaps that money will start to come his way. They need it very, very badly. Now, I've talked to a number of Republican donors over the last 12 hours or so, and they're for the most part saying we're closing up our wallets. But one thing you hear consistently from the Kasich team is the frustration that they haven't gotten the same outside support that Cruz has, and the hope that maybe Cruz backing out sends that support in their direction. But Carol, you bring up a good point. Donors are thinking exactly what you're thinking right now. Why are we going to give money when we don't see a legitimate path forward? That's the case Kasich is going to have to make over the next couple of days just to keep his campaign financed.
It's just so So Jason, I suppose there's still a little bit of time for a third-party candidate. Is that next for this Never Trump movement?
I mean, they can try, but who are they going to put their money behind? Like, John Kasich ends up 4th place in a 3-man race. Like, how bad can you be? So the Never Trump movement, I think, is going to say it's going to become the stay home movement. They don't have anyone they can support. People never really liked Ted Cruz. Marco Rubio was the little boy that could but never really made it. And so at this point, you either have to vote for Donald Trump, and we're going to see this, Carol. All these people are going to slowly pivot over the summer. They're going to say, all right, well, I guess Trump is better than Hillary. We've already heard that from Bobby Jindal. So the issue is going to be who decides to eventually hold their nose and vote for Trump, and who decides they're just going to stay home. Because the Never Trump movement is over.
So Sunlen, might Ted Cruz back the Never Trump movement? And actually, the more interesting question is, does he regret going off on that tangent against Donald Trump on the day of the Indiana primary?
I think so. I think that Ted Cruz regrets a lot of things. Oh, sorry.
Sunlen, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if I could, I think it probably was very cathartic almost to him. I think at that point it was very clear he felt very unshackled to speak his mind. And you said that there was this one phrase in that press conference, that rather remarkable press conference yesterday morning, where he said, let me just speak my mind on this and tell you what I really think about Donald Trump. In talking to aides, how he came to this decision and made that decision. It was something that he battled with Monday night going into Tuesday, didn't make his final decision and drop out until late in the day Tuesday. But it was very clear that Donald Trump really got under his skin, and certainly in the final hours, that specific attack on his father really struck a chord, aide said. So I don't know if there's a regret. I think he felt like he was unloading, and going forward, aides say that the tone that he took in that final message he intended to send to Donald Trump is something very important going forward. So when we're talking about him potentially throwing his support behind the Stop Trump, Never Trump movement, or potentially supporting him as a nominee, I think we can give a lot of weight to those words he said yesterday morning.
So Phil, Ted Cruz has been saying that John Kasich's real motive is to be Donald Trump's, VP, right? So Donald Trump came out today and he said that his running mate will be a Republican and will have some government experience. So is that possible at all, you think?
Well, certainly, if anything has been proven over this election cycle, Carol, I think anything is possible. But John Kasich has been very definitive. He does not want to be the vice president. He's not seeking the vice presidential nomination or being announced as the running mate. And his aides have been very clear. He would say no. Now, everybody more or less says that when they're running an active campaign. But I think the way John Kasich has set himself up the last 3 weeks with the alliance with Ted Cruz, with making this almost the entire campaign that he has left about stopping Donald Trump, about what a bad candidate in John Kasich's way of thinking Donald Trump is, really should take him out of the running, you would think. Now, Donald Trump has said nice things about John Kasich in the past, but I'd be surprised at this point, Carol, if that's something he would ever consider.
All right, Phil Mattingly, Sunlen Serfati, Jason Johnson, thanks to all of you. Still to come with the